Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to step back and look at something absolutely fascinating. We are going to impartially map out a highly structured methodology designed by Christians to guide religious conversations. It's called the straight line gospel conversation. Whether you are completely unfamiliar with this world or you know it like the back of your hand, we're going to look objectively at the architecture of how these interactions are trained to happen. And what you'll notice right away is how practitioners are taught to adopt a soft, interesting, and calm voice to set the entire tone. Right off the bat, you gotta understand the stated intention behind this framework. The text explicitly says the goal is absolutely not to manipulate anyone. Instead, it's to lovingly guide a person from self-righteousness to genuine repentance and faith. So it's a very deliberate, step-by-step dialogue aimed at a specific spiritual outcome. The practitioners are trained to view this as an act of profound care, which requires a highly intentional and steady approach. Okay, let's dive into this widescreen view of our roadmap. We'll start with the 3 essential certainties, move into the opening and intelligence gathering, use the law as a mirror, guard with the objection library, introduce the parachute of grace, and finally, make the final call. Section 1, the 3 essential certainties. So the training manual here is super strict. These 3 pillars absolutely have to be established before any deeper theological talk can even happen. It's basically a 3-legged stool. First up is certainty in the witness, meaning you, the person speaking. The listener has to believe you are sincere. Second is certainty in Jesus Christ as a historical figure. And third is certainty in God and His Word, accepting the premise of a just judge. The text warns that if the listener lacks confidence in your sincerity, Jesus' role, or God's justice, they literally will not take the message seriously. Everything rests on this foundation. Section 2, the opening and intelligence gathering. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the first few seconds of initiating this dialogue are meticulously choreographed. How do you actually walk up to someone? Well, first, be genuinely enthusiastic. Second, be sharp as a tack so you don't seem to be wasting their time. And third, establish yourself as a calm authority figure. But notice what's totally missing here. There is absolutely no mention of sin or the law at this stage. Instead, they rely purely on a warm, authoritative presence to secure the listener's time. And then, boom, the conversational pivot happens with this exact question. Do you consider yourself to be a good person? This is the intelligence gathering phase. The text emphasizes that the speaker's voice needs to be curious and disarming, never ever prosecutorial. They're just gently uncovering the person's underlying spiritual assumptions. If the person says yes, the speaker asks, what are you basing that on? They are digging for the why behind the listener's worldview. Section 3. The law as a mirror. This is arguably the core turning point of the entire framework. Once the listener states they believe they're a good person, the dialogue shifts to examining God's standard. And the text uses this vivid metaphor, the law as a mirror. The practitioner is trained not to point fingers. Instead, they just hold up a mirror. They reflect the listener's own actions right back to them, so the listener reaches their own internal self-verdict. It's designed to be a gentle yet very firm process. To actually hold up this mirror, the text recommends specific diagnostic questions relying purely on the listener's own conscience. Have you ever told a lie? Have you ever taken anything, no matter how small? Then they move to lust, referencing Jesus' teaching about adultery in the heart. And finally, blasphemy, asking if they've used God's name as a curse word. The speaker is instructed to walk through these one by one, calmly building a case using the listener's very own yes answers. All that methodical questioning builds up to this climax. By your own admission, you are a liar, a thief, an adulterer at heart, and a blasphemer. Man, that's a heavy sentence. Now, the training notes that if the listener hesitates or gets defensive right here, the speaker must absolutely not argue. They're instructed to calmly loop back and say something like, hey, I'm just reading the standard. You've already agreed these things are wrong. It keeps all the tension on the standard itself, not on the speaker. Section 4, guarding with the objection library. Because let's face it, human conversations rarely go perfectly to script. That's why the framework prepares speakers for inevitable pushback without ever getting into an argument. And this brilliantly illustrates how every single objection is categorized as an attack on one of those original 3 certainties we talked about. Say someone brings up, Christians are hypocrites. The gentle loop response asks, does someone else's failure change whether you broke the law? It's a system of really clever non-argumentative logic loops designed to just gently bring the person right back to the mirror of the law. Section 5, the parachute of grace. Once the weight of that moral standard is firmly established, and strictly only then, the good news is finally introduced. The training is incredibly strict that grace must never be presented until the bad news of guilt is fully felt. To explain why, the source uses this really powerful parachute analogy. Think about it. The incorrect use of a parachute is putting it on to make your flight more comfortable. If it doesn't, you're just going to take it off, right? The correct use is wearing it because the plane is crashing, and it's saving your life. The text warns that offering grace too early creates false converts who will just abandon ship when things get tough. So the crucial point is how this gospel is actually presented. It's framed just like a courtroom. Jesus lived a perfect life, died to take the punishment, and rose from the dead. In this courtroom scenario, you are guilty, and the fine is astronomical. But someone else steps in and pays your fine so you can legally walk free. Forgiveness is offered as a free gift, relying entirely on what Jesus did rather than on the listener's own goodness. Section 6, the final call. Now we enter the final phase. The script at this stage gets incredibly direct. Following Jesus isn't easy. It will cost you. The training absolutely insists that this final call has to be completely honest and unpressured. The listener needs to fully understand the potential social and familial costs of this decision. This isn't being sold as a magical ticket to an easy life. It's presented as an exchange, temporary worldly cost for eternal forgiveness. And that brings us to the methodology's final, ultimate outward pivot. What's stopping you from turning to him today? It's a direct, unpressured question that leaves the door completely open. The speaker has done their part of the framework. The ball is now entirely in the listener's court. As we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you to ponder this. In a world full of noise and just casual, everyday interactions, what does it say about human nature that such a highly structured, emotionally weighty, and straight-line approach to communication continues to be so profoundly influential? Think about that for a bit, and keep seeking to understand the frameworks that shape the conversations all around us.